In the B2B global digital economy, clearly one of the greatest challenges is not only winning new customers, but keeping them. Cutting-edge organizations are already strategically developing methods to build holistic relationships across the entire organization that demand a real sense of relationship and strong collaboration internally with one objective: a better competitive advantage that can only be achieved when each customer can identify a champion that knows and understands who they are, what they need, and gets real results in real time. Greetings, everyone, and welcome from the Technology Association of Georgia. It's February 9, 2016, and this is Tech Talk. I'm your host, Frank Baia. Up to the Tech Talk customer experience in the era of high-speed digital delivery, the new normal that demands the creating of an officer-level role for customer service that is cross-functional and operational as well as tactical. In the Tech Talk focus, Milista Anderson, Chief Customer Experience Officer at FIS, Corporate and Digital Solutions. Melissa is the Customer Officer for the company's Treasury Solutions business, leading the organization and its voice of the firm's customer program and customer experiences strategy. With more than 2 decades of experience in the design, development, and delivery of systems processes and organizational infrastructure within the software development area, her experience spans diverse industries including energy, financial services, manufacturing, and education. The Tech Talk explores delivering great customer service and just what is a customer experience strategy in the interactive era of the digital economy. It's a total focus on the customer experience. As we Tech Talk with Chief Customer Experience Officer for Banking and Payments Treasury Solutions at FIS, Milista Anderson. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Milista, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hi, Frank. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Interesting opportunity. I can't think of a perfect time to be talking about the whole payments environment. I think in the last several years, certainly in the last couple, exponential growth probably wouldn't define how much it's gone in advancing technologies. And now, obviously, we're entering into a whole new era where so much is dependent on satisfaction, customer experience, and I think it's even there's been conversation about an experiential marketing strategy that kind of an era we're entering into sort of what's next. But I know you guys have been on the cutting edge for some time, and in fact, maybe even a bit of a leadership in that area. Let's go into a little bit about your Chief Customer Experience Officer, because I think our listeners would be really interested to hear more about it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think to find a superlative for exponential is the challenge, because you're right to describe that the type of growth that we've had has been something out of the realm that we've not experienced yet. And when you think about what is a Chief Customer Experience Officer, it may sound simple and it may sound obvious, but it really is one who focuses the organization on customer experience. When you have a company as large as ours, and like many are, we're not unique in this, and you have specific functions that are focused on product, that are focused on sales, that are focused on client services, and every typical aspect from sales to delivery, it then really requires someone who's taking the organization up at a higher level and saying, hey, let's step back and let's just see, are we unified in our approach in the experience that we are providing to our customers? And so it really does help to have someone, it's almost like an independent inside consultant really helping to examine our conscience about how we are providing the experience for our customers.
Kind of fascinating when you think old school and you think in terms of going all the way down from the customer experience, across the exchange, have a nice day, and whether you actually really meant that or not, it was part of a training program, to now we're going to such a high speed, high connectivity that I would almost think that area has been forgotten. So I can see not only would you be at the edge of it looking into what's best, but as you're pointing out, maybe something like an advocate where this really stays at the forefront of management's decision-making and implementation. When did you guys get started on doing this as far as the program is concerned?
So we started this about 4 years ago, and it grew within a smaller segment of the company as a whole, and has gotten larger, and it will continue to expand larger. But it really kind of grew out of a need to bridge the tactical pieces of our organization. So we're a product company, we're a technology product company, and as such, we will track issues and incidents and requests from our customers that get turned into tickets, like most companies do. We also certainly focus on sales and making sure that our product is out there, it's marketed properly, and that we continue to acquire new customers. And then, we also have the need to look internally at ourselves and identify what systemic problems or blockers are affecting the customer. So it really came out of a need and a recognition to have a separate focus that would rise above all of those areas, not necessarily be even frankly compensated on sales or revenue as such, but really just held accountable for just how satisfied our customers are. And in my role, I had led customer services for a number of years, and it just sort of was a natural thing. I basically helped to create this role with our then president at the time, based on some research and based on some trends that I was seeing, out in the space, and recognized that, hey, we need something like this. Let's give it a try, and we've been at it ever since, and going strong.
Probably the fascinating point among numbers that you mentioned is the fact that you started doing this 4 years ago. When we were talking earlier about exponential growth, and trying to find some form of description of what's happening in the space has just been phenomenal, and it's obviously not just impacting the financial vertical, but it's impacting every single vertical where transactions are being conducted. So the idea of 4 years ago, I think thought leadership would be an understatement. Obviously, you've got a little track record going, and it might be helpful, again, to some of our listeners who are either experiencing similar situations or haven't yet, but are looking into how it works and how it really benefits the effort. Maybe go into a little bit of more depth in terms of, say, the benefit that having a role such as CX and an entire program has done for the company, and maybe as the overall electronic payments industry in general.
Yes, I think it's important to understand in this context that the primary part of our business is business to business. Now, as you've known that the SunGard company, which I was previously a part of, had been acquired by FIS, and FIS has a lot more to offer in the way of consumer banking. So what our program has grown up sort of with a B2B concept, but I think there's still an application here. What we have, and actually the reason I mention that is because it's still difficult really to kind of quantify when you're dealing with things, big, large customers, high-value contracts, long-term relationships. It's sometimes hard to quantify just the actual outputs of the program. Mm-hmm. But I will say that upon measuring just on sort of our general annual surveys and satisfaction, we have raised our satisfaction score by 10%, year over year. It has allowed us to establish a common language for our staff. And you hear now more often the question of, well, how will this impact the customer? If we decide to design the product this way, or if we cut off this type of service, if we design this type of service, how will the customer be impacted? And I wouldn't say that we had a unification around that very strongly before. So all that to say that it has really created a strong awareness within the company, and at least a common language, and everybody at least facing in the right direction to understand that we do have an obligation to that customer that sometimes we don't always get to see because of our B2B type of model, but they're out there and they do make decisions as to whether or not they continue to do business with us. And I think ultimately the fact that our customers have recognized the differentiation that we do have such a program, they do like the fact that they're doing business with a company that has a chief customer experience officer, and that there is someone responsible and focused and held accountable for their overall satisfaction.
One of the things that would be, I would think, difficult for someone that's not at the edge that you guys are, with the experience that you have, to determine the difference, say, between a good or acceptable customer experience and a great customer experience. And I'm sure that represents a lot of challenges that you have had to face. Maybe you can share some of the challenges that any company has to deal with when they're working towards delivering that great customer experience that you're talking about.
You're absolutely right. And I would say that right off the bat, the biggest challenge is the fact that we are a very big global company. We're in 130 countries. We have 55,000 worldwide employees that cross, many continents, many different cultures. And so really just reaching everyone from an employee perspective to help to influence the message, make sure that they're equipped with the right tools, and just some of the basics of, say this, don't say that, present the right face to your customer is a challenge. And as I mentioned before, another challenge is really quantifying the benefit. A lot of it, you can quantify the difference in your survey results, yes, but a lot of it comes in whether or not a customer will give you a reference or not. And in our business, that's huge. And so sometimes those benefits come less frequently, but the impact is really high. And then I think the other challenge is competing with the parts of our business that are equally important, which requires a balance. Yes, we want to provide a great customer experience for all customers, but we're also providing a product that thousands of customers use, and as they say, you can't please all the people all the time, and so trying to make the right priority of product features and functions and usability and ensuring that we're investing in the right thing is a competing challenge. Ensuring that we're properly staffed in all areas is a competing challenge. Certainly sales is a competing challenge, just in terms of where we put our priority and what gets executive focus and attention and investment. And so it's trying to find that right balance. But at the end of the day, what I try to tell people down to every employee level who's on the phone with the customer or just designing something for the customer, you as an employee are a consumer customer yourself. Mm-hmm. You know what it means to interact with the brands that you interact with on a daily basis, whether that's your bank, your coffee, your airline, your phone. All that means something to you. And so you already know what a great customer experience feels like and looks like. All I'm asking is to make sure that our customers, even though they're using a product that may not be as consumer-based as that, are still having and still expecting that type of customer experience. So just relate to them in that way.
Well, as you were speaking, I was thinking, obviously you've identified the difference between a good and a great, and hopefully by presenting also the reality that there isn't a perfect, that you actually go in, and I guess analytics play a huge part, both predictive and even prescriptive analytics, once you get a basic feedback from some of the experiences that you have, and that's probably helpful. But I think, as you're pointing out, sometimes information can both be educational and misleading, so interpretation plays a large role. But you went over some of the challenges. How have you overcome these challenges?
Well, it's definitely a constant drumbeat, to say the least. So we run a lot of internal educational programs that can just be as basic with messages as follow up and follow through. And that I may hold a 15-minute podcast or a training session and focus in on that one specific activity or improvement, not to overwhelm people with all the things that they need to improve, but just give them something to hone in on and give them some examples. So it's a constant messaging and a constant training and awareness, which is not unlike other organizations face when they're really trying to get a cultural movement within. And the other thing that it's helped to overcome is I do have good support at the executive level, and so that helps. And that's my advice to anybody: if you're going to try to provide some sort of or create some sort of customer experience program or initiative, ensure that you have executive level support. If you can report directly to the president of that business unit, all the better, but don't go too far down from that, because likely in a role You don't have the authority over the resources, but you just have to rely on influence, and having that backing is key to that. And so we've had that. So that's one thing that, you know, I continue to try to maintain within the organization, is that type of support.
Well, as you point out, obviously the subject is on everybody's mind, and the only way that you can really achieve any real accountability and real success is consistency, going at it. But obviously, as you point out, it's not a second or third tier goal. It's a part of a customer strategy, so it comes right from the top all the way through to the entire organization. As we unfortunately quickly and often do, running out of time, talking about a subject that I think a lot of people have a great interest in, especially coming from such an experienced professional as you. Maybe kind of go into that a little bit as we close. Talk a little bit about the company's customer strategy. Is there a specific strategy? And obviously it must tie into the customer experience that you've been talking about.
Right. Our strategy relies on 3 R's. It makes it really easy to talk about within the organization. So 3 R's. One is retention. Focus on customer retention. With any product company, you're going to have customers that are long-standing but that are maybe on an outdated version of your product, or maybe a version that is no longer supported. So you want to hang on to those customers and get them on your new core product. And I mention that as an example of our retention because obviously every company would want to retain all their customers, but in our world we have to focus in on a set of customers just so we can have a set of real and specific actions to take, and that's an example. So we make a retention focus each year. The second R is reference. I mentioned that earlier. In this business, with such high-value contracts, references are key. And it's a recommendation, but we're talking about references at the top level of our customer organizations. So again, we focus in on, say, 20 or 30 customers that we want to make sure that we are providing reference-worthy service, and we understand what may be blockers to those, and we go after those to fix them in that given time period so that we can earn that reference. And then the third R is relationship growth. So some people might call that wallet share, but it is if your customers are buying more from you, then that speaks to your experience that you're providing. So that in a way it's a measure and an output, but in a way it's also part of the strategy to ensure that we're constantly putting in front of them other products and services that they can buy by earning the reference and earning the right to retain them over time. That just becomes sort of that third R with our 3-legged stool there.
And I guess the fourth one has got to be results when you're doing it right, because obviously that's something that you guys have been doing for a while, as I was kind of taken a little bit aback by the fact that it's been almost 4 years that you've been doing this, but now it's understandable why you're providing such thought leadership and so much success in that particular area. Milista, thank you so much for taking time that I know is a very busy schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.